Hey, I'm Tiernan with Queerty, and it is such an honor to be joined today by Steven Rowley and Byron Lane, two incredible authors who both happen to have books coming out May 30th, The Celebrants by Steven Rowley and Big Gay Wedding by Byron Lane. And speaking of Big Gay Wedding, they also happen to be married. Byron, Steven, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Thank you for having us.
I'd love to ask each of you a bit about your new books, if you wouldn't mind giving us the quick pitch.
The Celebrants, was inspired by early on during the pandemic when we were all sheltering at home, rewatching the movie The Big Chill. And it was a movie I remembered sort of liking, and it has a sparkly cast of future Oscar winners, except Glenn Close, your day is coming. But I watched this movie, which is about life in middle age and what the back half of our lives are going to look like. And all the characters in it were 35, which seemed so remarkably young to me to be worried about middle age. So this is sort of a modern day spin on that, about a group of college friends who, after the death of one of their own right before graduation, make a pact to come back together at their most difficult moments in life and throw each other their funeral, their sort of living funeral, so they can see how much they are loved, and hopefully help raise them out of whatever is causing them grief at the moment.
So this is Big Gay Wedding, and Big Gay Wedding is a modern take on the movie Father of the Bride, except instead of a father, it's a mother,
and it's instead of a bride,
it's a groom, couple of grooms. The mom runs a rescue ranch in rural Louisiana, and her son Barnett is coming home with some big news. He wants to get married on the farm, and of course she has some concerns about that. And so that's the story of Big Gay Wedding. Lots of heart, lots of humor.
Byron, your debut novel, A Star Is Bored, tackled Hollywood, celebrity culture, being an assistant in such an honest, painful way. And so it's hard not to take note of the pivot here to a more small town centered story that we sort of only got a glimpse of in your debut. Can you tell us a bit about that decision and what it was like writing from this perspective?
Sure. Well, Big Gay Wedding was sort of inspired by A Little Gay Wedding when Steven and I got married in 2020. It was the thick of COVID, and I had just finished chemo for a recurrence of testicular cancer. So our wedding was really small. For Star Is Bored, I looked at my own life and my experience working for Carrie Fisher, and that inspired that story. And so I tried to think in terms of what would inspire Big Gay Wedding. And I looked at our small wedding and thought, well, what if it was big? What if it was grand? And I'm from the South, so I'm from the New Orleans area, and my family is still down there in kind of a rural part of Louisiana. And I thought, well, what if there was a big gay wedding that came to town? And that's kind of how I landed on this.
Now, I have to ask you something that's kind of a deep cut, and I want to get into the last chapter of Steven, your debut novel, Lily and the Octopus. And very light spoilers ahead for the viewers, but the main character ends up going on a first date with someone named Byron. Very cute scene. Begs the question, what is the real origin story of the two of you, and how did you meet?
Well, the real origin is OkCupid. And I'll tell you, this was 10 years ago. So OkCupid was the big thing. And it was Steve's writing. I mean, very handsome pictures too. But his writing really drew me to him. And
this was 10 years ago.
Stop it.
I've aged a little more
handsome,
more haggard now. Yeah.
My first message to him, which we still have somewhere, was about his writing. Like, your profile is so funny. And then we did meet in some ways that mirror what you wrote about in Lily and the Octopus.
Yeah, I think, Lily and the Octopus, my debut book, had a lot of magical realism in it. There was a lot of flights of fancy. There was a lot that, while it was inspired by some true life events, really took on a life of its own. But I couldn't figure out how to bring that book back in for a landing. And sometimes there's no more perfect ending than the truth. So I think that reflects, for anyone who's interested, that really reflects a lot about how we met. Now, I wasn't going to originally name that character Byron, but I wanted to use this Lord Byron poem to help with the ending. And it just, if I'd named you Arthur or whatever, it just wouldn't have worked in the same way. And so we did have a conversation about it.
Of course, I love it. I love it.
And then I remember the publisher put out a book club guide that had questions, and one of the questions was, "What do you think of the Byron character? Do you think he and the narrator have any future together?" And I was like, "Oh no, women in book clubs drinking box wine are gonna like weigh in on our relationship." And
Right.
so, but what's so fun about that is at the end of A Star Is Bored in Byron's debut novel, there's a little echo of that too, where that character meets someone at the end too. And so there's a lovely sort of document of both of our origin stories. And further than that, Byron actually proposed in the acknowledgement section of A Star Is Bored,
Yeah.
right? Which
So at the end of the book, in the story, there's a character named Reed who really is inspired by Steven. And then the book was set to come out, and it had gone to the printer, and I was going through chemo, and COVID was happening, and COVID really, we were already really close, and COVID kind of, I think, brought us even closer, and the cancer experience and all that. And I thought, it's time. We had talked about getting married, and I thought, I'm going to propose in the back of this book. I'm going to win the proposal wars. And I called my editor and I was like, "Hey, can we add a few words to the acknowledgements?" And he's like, "It's at the printer. What? And so I said, "Well, I want to say, will you marry me?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I think we can work that out." So then I waited until the book arrived. I got it in the mail. I opened it up and I asked Steven "Hey, will you look at these, last few words in the acknowledgement? Is this okay?"
And I'd read the book forward and backwards, so I was like, "I've already read this. Why do I need to look again?" But there was one more, a few extra words at the end of the book, and of course, my reaction was, "Is this in all the copies?"
Yeah, I remember that. I'm not sure if he said yes before or after that question, but he did ask, like, "Is this everywhere?"
Oh, that's so funny.
And if anyone's curious how it turned out, I responded to the proposal in the acknowledgements for The Guncle, which was my next book. So people can read proposal and the answer to the proposal. And both of those are now housed in the Library of Congress, which is kind of special.
Is it gross? Is this gross?
What's gross is I named my character Byron, but you changed you didn't name your character Steve. I guess there's no great love poem about anyone named Steven.
Reed. There's something so about the name Reed.
It is a good name.
It's
like a solid single syllable.
I can't say that I know any Reeds in real life. Anyway.
So I'm curious for each of you, what are the books, queer and otherwise, that have shaped you as writers?
I first came out 30 years ago now. So, back when I was a closeted kid or teenager, I was looking for a lot of like what is now sort of classic queer literature. And so much of it was, sad about lives lived in the shadows and life cut tragically short. And that was, sadly, the reality for many lives at that time. So I read, Christopher Isherwood, Single Man, or James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room, or things like that. But I was also so grateful for just some sense of what it felt like to be attracted to another man, or to what loving another man could feel like. And it also gave me a little glimpse into what it was possible to write, as a queer writer. And so those books were deeply important to me. And now I'm so grateful that there's a lot of literature like these two books, which are about celebration and joy and the possibility for lives, and don't necessarily need to be tragedies. And it's been a great, it's been great to witness that evolution in queer literature.
The Heart's Invisible Furies is one of my favorites recently. I love everything by Chuck Palahniuk. And
definitely not gay.
Right.
Right.
Some gay. And then Confederacy of Dunces, which takes place in Louisiana, was written by a gay man, and that's a beautiful, fun story. And gay and otherwise, in the otherwise category, there's Carrie Fisher's books, which have been a real inspiration to me. Postcards from the Edge was so brilliant, and Surrender the Pink are stories that have such edge in them. They're so subversive, and I love stories like that can take me outside of reality a little bit and make the world a little more colorful.
I think they're also reflective of what we do, which is take a kernel of something from real life and then be able to build that into a story. And also that great mix of heart and humor that I love and work, and hopefully is something that we both pour into our work as well.
Yeah, Carrie used to say, "Take your broken heart and go make art." And I think about that every time I sit down to write.
Thank you both so much for being here. Very excited for Big Gay Wedding and The Celebrants, which both come out May 30th.
God help us, publishing industry testing our marriage, but we're going to lean into it and have a lot of fun, I think. So
thank you so much for chatting with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more from us at Queerty, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.